Welcome to the ISAS Pre-Adjudication Process webinar. This webinar provides a detailed walkthrough of the pre-adjudication process, which will allow you, as provider administrators, to manually enter missing clock-in clock-out times for your staff members. Please note that all manual time entries will go through a review process before being processed for billing purposes. Manual entry can be accomplished in two ways. One is to enter clock-in clock-out for a previous day's shift, or by resolving either a missing clock-in or clock-out associated with a partially recorded service from a previous day. Now, let us log into the ISAS system and see what I mean by that. When you log in as a provider administrator into ISAS, you will see several tabs, some of which you may already be familiar with, such as the Home, Providers, Claims, and Reports. Now you will also see Enter Calls and Exceptions, two new tabs. Let's take a look at the Enter Calls tab. This is one way to manually enter time for services rendered. If you look at the Enter Calls tab, there are several pieces of information required to clock in and out for a particular day's shift. And again, this tab is when you need to enter clock in and clock out times for services rendered. So for example, if a staff member tells you that they forgot to clock in and out for a particular day's service, you can come into the Enter Calls tab and enter that information. So the first thing you will need to enter is a service type, and you have two choices: personal assistant services or shared attendance services. Now, in majority of the cases, you will select personal assistant services because very few providers currently render shared services. The next thing you will need is the client's MA number. Now, just to clarify, any information that's being entered here on this screen is test data and not real client data or provider data. We are working with a test site here, and all of this information is not real. So as soon as they enter the client's MA number, the client's name is being populated in this box here. The provider number is already populated when we first come into this tab. When you log in as a provider administrator, your agency's provider number will automatically be populated here, along with your agency's name. So all you will have to do at this point is go to this drop-down and select the staff member that you are entering this service for. Once you've selected the staff member's name, you can come down here and enter a specific clock in and clock out time. So in this example, I will take the 27th, 6:30 a.m. as my service start time. And I will take the 27th, 6:30 p.m. as my service end time. And now, if I click the Create button here, I will get a pop-up box which asks me to specify why this time is being entered manually. Now, once you enter a reason and click Yes, you will get a message that says this record has been saved, which means that this transaction has been entered into the system and submitted to DHMH for approval. Now, this is one way you can manually enter time for a particular day's shift. Now, if you know that your staff member was able to either clock in or clock out, but they were not able to enter a full transaction, for example, a staff member clocked in for a service, but they forgot to clock out, or they couldn't clock in, but they remembered to clock out. In such scenarios, an exception will be created. So if you go to the Exceptions tab, you can see once again that your provider number is pre-populated, which means you can only search for exceptions for your particular agency. And you can here enter a particular staff member's name or pick a specific date and search by that. Now, you need to look for exceptions with the status of new, because anytime a clock in or clock out or entered through the IVR system, but a corresponding clock in or clock out is not found, the system will create an exception. What do I mean by that? So again, if a staff member clocked in for a service but forgot to clock out, there will be an exception, which is in the new status, which then you, as provider administrator, have to come into the system, look for that particular transaction, and enter the missing information. It could be a clock out that's missing, or it could be a clock in information that's missing. So let's take this example. Let's first search for all exceptions in the new status, and I'm going to start from December 1st and search. Now this brings us several transactions. I'm going to look at the first one. There is a result link that I just clicked, which will take me to a page that shows all information pertaining to that particular transaction. So in this case, it shows me, of course, the service information with the client name and the type of service provided. It also gives me the clock out information, which means my staff was able to clock out through the IVR system, but they forgot to clock in. So I have to enter the clock in information here. So I'm going to select December 12th, 9 a.m. as my clock in time. I already have the clock out time, which is 10:35 a.m. Now I'm going to press resolve, which will show a pop-up again asking a reason as to why this is being entered manually. Once I have provided that reason and clicked yes, I will get another message that says the record has been saved, which again means that transaction has been now submitted for DHMH approval. Now, in such cases where you have resolved some of these and you'd like to know what decision has been made. Now, if it has been approved by DHMH, you will not be able to search for them in this tab. But if they have not been, then you'd like to know what the reason was. So you can select a status of not authorized and search. And there is a view button where you can check as to what the reason was. Once again, you will see all the information pertaining to that particular service provided, including the clock in, clock out times and the date of service. And at the bottom, you will also see the reason why DHMH rejected this particular transaction. Now, if you are satisfied with the information you see here and you do not want to see that information, you can very well discard that particular transaction and provide a reason as to why you are discarding it. And if you search for not authorized transactions again, you will not see that in the list of transactions. That information or that particular transaction will not appear in the ISAS system anymore. So just to recap, there are two ways time entry can be done manually. One is through this exceptions tab by searching for any exceptions in the new status. Now you can do that by a specific staff member's name or just look up everything for a specific date. And by clicking the resolve button that comes up next to each transaction. The other way to do that is to go through the Enter Calls tab. Now remember, the Enter Calls is only if you are entering both the clock in and clock out time for a particular service being rendered. And in both cases, once you have entered the transaction information, they will be submitted to DHMH for approval before being processed for billing purposes. With that, I conclude this webinar for pre-adjudication process. Thank you.